Okay. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to our second edition of Sacred WombTalks. This is where YEWAS, Sisters of Tomorrow, Sacred Growth Traditions, brings together girls and women to talk about our health, to talk about sacred feminine health, reproductive health, our emotional and social well-being, and just topics that are relevant. We do this because we are advocates for rites of passage, for our girls having access to their elders, to role models, and passing on. It is our responsibility to pass on these traditions, not for them to find it in the streets, on television, but we want to have dialogues and conversations as long as we can, hold on to our girls as long as we can, to prepare them to be sustainable, independent, interdependent, community-oriented, empowered Black women in this world, leaders, etc. So today we're bringing you Ayodele Kinchen. She is, I'm going to let her introduce herself, but this is my dear, dear sister. On the line, I also have my big sister, Folami Irvine, calling from Philadelphia. So we're going to talk to Ayodele about all the beautiful things she does and how she represents this beautiful African woman, beautiful tradition, passing on traditions, and being abundant. Being abundant is just the message that we have to pass on to our children, all of our children, but especially our girls. And so her business skills, her organization, being a mother, I'm just so in awe of her. So I'm gonna let you introduce yourself. Oh, I see you got a gele on now. I'm gonna let Ayodele introduce herself, and I want to, please, Ayodele, please introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So greetings, ladies. I'm closing out a customer right now to a friend. But my name is Ayodele. I am a native of East Palo Alto, California, which is in the peninsula here in California. Some people know it as Silicon Valley, but I knew it as EPA. And I have roots in Oakland, which is where my store is located. I have a store, which is where I house my business. My business is called Duafe Designs and Waist Beads by Ayodele. And Duafe, after the Adinkran symbol, which is the wooden comb symbol that represents all those beautiful and innate about what a woman represents. So I thought that was definitely apropos for what I do, which is what I create with my own hands. I am a woman. I am African rooted, and so I'm a crafter. I am a maker, a creator. I have some expertise in sewing and crochet and beadwork, and I got into waist beads in particular. That's more so got into it when I was wearing them as a kid. I started wearing them as a teenager. And I was introduced through a rite of passage program about the basis of why waist beads are worn for young girls and for women. And it was something that was presented to me in alignment with my growth and my rite of passage into womanhood. And so I've always had a connection that was very cultural, traditional based, in alignment with wearing waist beads. And because I'm a crafter, I'm a maker, I eventually started making waist beads, and people started asking me to make for them. So that was about 15 years ago when I started making beads for other people, and has become like a primary offering that I offer, a product that I offer, which has actually opened up a lot of doors and awakenings even for myself as far as how I see myself as a artist. Almost like an artivist, so like an artist and activist, where I'm actually trying to present a movement with what I do. So anything, any product, a service I do, it has to have a connection to the community. And I know that this is uplifting young girls, uplifting women, and kind of shifting our framing of thought of how we take care of ourselves, and really diving into what self-love and what self-care is and what self-preservation means for ourselves. And so I use this as a medium to teach young girls and women about taking care of themselves, and as telling myself, this is really my own self-teaching. I'm just a vessel, but I'm halfway teaching myself to always keep myself in the mindset and training myself to always put myself first so that I can be there for my family, I can be there for my community, I can be there for this world and really shift movements in the most healthiest state. So, and then also honoring this cultural, dynasty that we are a part of. Even though we're detached to a certain degree, we're still very much connected to what I feel like is royalty. The first life on this earth, the first beings, that's royal in itself. And so I represent myself like a queen. I project this, and I would want this for all women, especially Black women in particular, and throughout the entire diaspora, to feel the same love and the same energy, as well as the same responsibility to take care of ourselves so that we can be present holistically. So my offerings are all connected to mind, body, and spirit. The Rite of Passage program that I grew up in is called Sisters of Tomorrow, which still has a chapter now based in the East Coast. I am building this chapter back up on the East Bay, so there will be an East Bay chapter that is more prominent. Asatu is keeping me spirited with YEWAS to bring SOT back alive and to work in tandem so that we can support each other with different age groups. As I have children, girls who are younger, and a lot of the girls she works with are in their teens. And so my program that I went through was from 7 to 18. And so that's a huge wide range. So the hope is kind of break that group up, maybe to 7 to 12-ish. And I work with those ages primarily. And then YEWAS supports the olders. And then we do conjoining efforts and field trips, activities, etc. I'm also a dancer. I've been African dancing for all my life. I'm a performer. I used to perform on many stages. So I have a family. I'm a mother. I'm a wife of 17 years. I have 3 children, ages 7, 10, and 13. 2 young girls and a boy who's the oldest. But yes, that's a little bit about who I am. Mm-hmm. And we're actually in my space. I'll kind of move the camera around a little bit. I'm closing out somebody right now. I know they have to go too. But thank you, Satu, for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, sis.
I know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I know you have a client. A customer, do you want to close her out, or do you have to go, or can I ask you 2 questions?
Let me close her out. Give me like.
Okay, then I'm gonna have Folami introduce herself while you do that. Then.
Wonderful. Then I can listen.
Even though she wasn't planning it, put her on the spot. I know, Sister Folami, put you on the spot. Okay, let Ayodele close out her customer. Thank you.
Thank you, love.
From Philly. Sister Folami, big sis, powerful healer, powerful healer, activist, birth worker, teacher, instructor, business owner, wonderful mother. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, greetings. I'm Folami Irvine. I'm a 5th generation folklore healing artist. So pretty much that's like, it's something that you don't just go and get. It's pretty much like a calling, from early on. I remember my grandmother and my aunts and my uncles. I remember my aunt saying, "Is she the one?" And then I remember my minister calling me grandma when I was little. So when I was little, I always was around older people, and they had gave me this calling that she's the one. And so now as I grew up, I understood who the one is. And it's not always easy because you're asked to do different things on this journey. And sometimes you're met with a lot of resistance and obstacles. But when you're called to be the one, you have to you got to push through. It's about being relentless. And this has brought me on the journey to really being, keeping things in the culture alive and giving back to young ladies and giving back to communities, giving back to families. But my main focus is girls, women, and babies and families here in Philadelphia. So I've been doing sister circles, quite some time.
How long have you been doing sister circles?
I started, when I think about it, my younger cousins, one is 40, one's 39. When we were coming up here in the Philadelphia area, you always had an older sister that took you under your wings. So I believe I started taking one young sister, she has her doctorate today, and she was like my first little mentee. I would take her everywhere I would go, wherever I would go, I would take her. So it was just a part of the culture growing up, we were nice to each other. If you was a little girl, if you couldn't jump double dutch, they would call you the pretty girl. So it was just a part of our way of living back in the 70s. You always had a little sister. But when I really started doing things in the community on this level, it must have been in the 80s.
In the 80s. Wow. Okay. And then I want you to go back. Can you just talk about your healing work? I mean, I know you missed that. I didn't also that you're a priestess, but can you talk about iridology? Like this is how many of our folks still do iridology? Like we have, like Dr. Goss. It's the only, like that's the only one I know. But you come from a legacy.
Yes, like so my family. So basically, like I said, I was first introduced to my first herb at 3 years old. My grandmother gave me sassafras. And then I began to see my uncle, he would bring turpentine and different things. And then my cousin, he began to tell me about herbs when I was like about 11 or 12. And then I had met, I met someone, she's an elder in the community. We call her Mama Carol Mitchell. She began to, she was doing iridologist, she was doing muscle testing. And I was kind of getting into it, but I was in like my early 20s. So I wasn't really appreciating and understanding it. But she would come in, and I had a friend and he was dying, and she began to give him herbs and he got better. But he said he didn't want to live no more. So you had to understand that about healing too. Sometimes you can get people and they can get better, but if they don't want to be here, you have to really understand that's the part of healing. The person kind of got to have the will to want to do it. But moving fast forward, I learned under Carol Mitchell. She helped me when I was pregnant with my first daughter, and then I went to her when my daughter was about 4 or 5 years old. I went to the doctors and they was telling me that, I said, I feel like I'm not fertile. And then she gave me an herb in January and February. I conceived. And she looked in my eyes, she muscle tested me and gave me 2 herbs. She gave me liquid root and some trace minerals. But that was for me. And that's the thing about a healer. She knew how to give who was for my body, my blueprint. And then so my cousin, Dr. Wyatt, he ended up having an herbal store here in the Philadelphia area. So one day I went to the herbal store and another mentor, Dr. Kathy Perlman, came to me and said, you should take this iridologist class. I was like, I ain't interested in that. She was like, I'm telling you, take it. So I said, how much is the class? She said, $250. Now, this is my cousin, flesh and flesh, blood of blood, but I respected his craft, so I paid for it. So I bought $50 money order, $50 money order. And then by the time I came, I probably owed $50 more dollars or $74 more dollars. She said, don't bring no more. She said, I want you to come to the class and help out and, be at this class. So I went to the class. And so when we had the iridologist class, my cousin told us all for homework, look in as many eyes as you can. And when we came back the next day, I had looked in over 20-something eyes. So I had won $100, and it has not been no looking back since then. And that's the thing that I really liked was iridologists. We learned about nutrition, body systems. He had a whole 5 different classes that you took, but the iridologist is the one that I really gravitated to. It was like a second calling to me. Like my mother played the piano by ear. That's how when I began to look in eyes, I could pick up things right away. Just the first eyes I looked into, I was able to pick up. Because when you look into the irises, it's like a clock. And on the top, it's 12 o'clock. Then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so it's like a clock. And the 12 o'clock is the brain. And the 6 o'clock is like the feet and the legs. So when you look in there, and there's like, you have zones. So they'll tell the outside of our irises. And so you'll go and you can look, it shows the different weaknesses. It can show what you have inherited from your parents, your grandparents, and anybody in your lineage, it can show you. And so by looking in the right and the left of the eyes, you can tell what's going on with the body. And when you have a client and they say, I did this, I did that, you can tell if they're eating a lot of fried foods. You can tell. So the eyes, when they say window of the soul, they also tell a lot of other things too. So when you do that, and so when you do a consultation, my cousin said that you just don't go for one thing. You have to connect the dots. So I would look into your eyes. I would look at your hands. I would look at I could do a face read. Right here is your uterus. So sometimes when you see people with a deep dent here, this is their uterus or prostate for the men. Sometimes if a woman had a
You're like,
I know. I'm like,
I'm just joking.
I can look at the chin and I can tell the woman's cycle is coming on or going off. Underneath here, these are your kidneys, your intestines. So there's different parts of your body you can touch. Just like she's up near her head, her crown, you can talk high blood pressure points are up there, nerves, and then your right side is your potassium. This is sodium. So if somebody's leaning more to this side of their body, that means they need potassium. This side, there may be some sodium challenges going on, so you learn about the whole body and you connect the dots. Because I might look in your eyes and I might see something going on here, but you don't have the problem, but you have it inherited, your parents or your grandparents, but because you change your diet and your lifestyle, you do not have, you're more prone, you may have a weakness in that area, but you strengthen it because you eat different. She dances on stage all the time. She does what she loves to do. She's going to probably have longevity because my aunt was a seamstress. My cousin Sally lived to be 101. She did what she loved to do. And women who love to do what they do, they have less fibroids. They don't have as many things going on. You're not going to find somebody that work with creativity because she's doing that womb work. And with her doing that dancing, she's doing that crafting, she's doing all the things that she loves to do. And I guarantee you, she don't have no womb issues going on. She don't have none. And if she does, it's some kind of disconnect or something else that she may carry.
I did. She's looking in your eyes.
No, I thought it was good. Then that came.
If she's carrying, it's one thing. Sometimes we do carry the weight of other people.
We carry the weight of other people.
I had a young lady come into the store and she kept having problems. She never had children, but she said, my baby. She worked with young girls. So her left ovaries bothered her because she worked with girls all the time. So your left side is your feminine side. Your right side is your masculine. So if you see that baby sucking his right thumb, there needs to be some healing between him and daddy and grandpa or some man in his life. If it's the left thumb, it's the female.
So when can I get a session?
I know.
I need somebody to read me. I need somebody to read the eyes, the tongue.
Let me go like this.
I need all that.
Yes. And so also, they look into the iris. New iridologists, the younger generation, they're saying that brown eyes are too hard to look at, but it takes a lot of practice.
Like most of
and
our
you
people.
can look into them. You just have to not be lazy. And so a lot of people are now looking into the sclera, or they're taking pictures of eyes and they're trying to do assessments like that. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I just do it old school way. I know how to look with the camera, but what did those cameras and technology feel? You better always know how to do it the natural way, where you can look with a loop. You get a loop and you look in the eyes and you have a little light and you look in the irises and you check out the different zones and you check out the different, every clock represents a different organ, different tissues, and it can more or less tell you what things you need to work on. The first thing you want to look to see if all the fibers are tight together, because that means that person have a strong constitution. And when I look at often the African American eyes, many of you all have a strong constitution. But Sally over there might have a weaker constitution, but she eats right and she jogs every day. So where Shakita started with a higher and better constitution, she didn't do that self-care. She didn't do certain things. So Sally can sometimes be healthier, not because her constitution was stronger, but because she took care of herself.
Yeah, you mentioned something. I want to segue to bring Ayodele into this. She said, so thank you. What you said is about that natural born constitution, but you also brought up self-care. And then I heard Ayodele say something about shifting the framework. So that brought up a question for me, and I know you mentioned it. So here I am just waist beating, but then I'm now working with women in their very sacred place around. So a lot of us, or a lot of people think of, especially I see a lot of young women, think of waist beads as just adornment, just something sexy. And until they get some waist bead, they get them on, or they're in the process, and it's like, oh shoot, now you're tapping into something, or you're seeing something. So can you explain like, or share an experience? Because I know you've talked about an experience. Well, go back. Why do we wear waist beads? Where did it come from? And
Okay.
then please share an experience, because I'm starting to think that we're like body therapists.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I mean, you talk eyes, bodies, left, right, and then
Yes.
yeah. So, can you share an experience, or go back
Yeah.
to
First
why?
start off
Yeah,
with the
the real reason.
origins.
The real
Yeah.
reason, not just.
Um, yes. So, people will say the word waist bead and then not really understand that the waist is actually very intentional. It seems like a name, but it's very intentional why they are waist beads, because they are on the waist. Now, why the waist? Because this is where our womb space is. This is where our female organs lie. And this is also where we consider the breath of life stems from. And so a young woman is honored in her different stages of rite of passage, from the time we are born to the time we transition off of this earth, to honor the gifts that she will bestow while she's living. And some of the gifts come in the form of life. As women, we have the ability to procreate. And all of this happens in our womb space. And how important it is, even years before you get to that stage of being of childbearing age, or being a woman who actually is bearing a child or delivering a child and then raising a child. It celebrates all these moments in the journey to each of these spaces, to each of these places in life, each of these rites of passages. And so the waist beads are worn around the belly to really to remind the wearer, the young girl or the woman, to remind them of their gifts, to remind them of their innate beauty, whether that's their beauty from inside or their exterior beauty. Reminding us, in each and every one of us, that we're all beautiful beings. We're all very unique and special in that right order. But also the beads were worn as a symbol of protection, as protecting this womb space. And so oftentimes in cultural settings, traditional African and indigenous settings, they would actually pray over the beads first before gifting them to the child or to the woman or to the young girl, so that wherever that person went with their vessel, their body, they will be symbolically protected. And so the idea of good health, being mindful of what you feed into your body, your state of mind, your state of being, how you feel about yourself, how you speak of yourself, how you treat yourself, was all related to the healthy part of living, and living in the skin, in the vessel that we're in. And then the beauty part was, loving ourselves for who we were, who we are, whether that goes down to, the two legs we have, the arms that we have, the hands, the ability to speak, our uniqueness in color, in how we, our features, how they are exemplified, or examples of our origins and our roots. And then this idea of protection, so protecting us no matter where we went. There's this idea that, yes, the woman should be protected. Without us, there is no life. If women just decided to give up on having children for the rest of eternity, what would this world look like 120 years from now? Probably like crickets will be all that's happening. So it's just really embodying, the importance and value of us as a sex, as individuals living this divine feminine experience and journey, and being mindful of that each and every day. And so you wear it in your waist, on your waistline, to serve also as an affirmation. So the colors have certain symbolisms and meanings. Some people will incorporate, as I do, incorporate gemstones, which have their own vibrational energies and properties, to aid in what you're trying to manifest for yourself, or what you want to embody, what type of energy you want to be around you and protecting you. Because a lot of stones are actually chosen in the form of protection or in the form of healing. And so I've had so many experiences in regards to beads, and personal reasons why people have selected beads, but I've learned how super important it is that I value the message, the origin of the meanings of waist beads, and I offer that to each and every person that gets beads from me. I think it's very important. History is always important, always relevant. So I'm always, instilling that into people. But a lot of people have turned to waist beads as a form of healing. And so I've kind of transformed how I think of myself as not just a crafter or a healer, not just a crafter, but a healer. Because a lot of people come looking for closure or looking for new beginnings, dealing with trauma, dealing with loss, the lack of forgiveness. And in addition to our womb space being a center of life, it's also where we hold and embody our emotional energy. So all of our emotional ups, downs, joys, from joys to pains, all of that is enveloped and sits and rests in our womb space as well. And so it's often, we might hear something like, you make me so sick to my stomach, as a woman saying that. And that is very real. People can make you so disturbed that it triggers how you feel internally, but it's all starting from your gut area, your womb space area. And so why it's always so super important, you're just conscious of the spaces you keep, the people who are in your circle, because you don't want to be ingesting anything negative that's debilitating you. And then the womb space has also been coined as the center of intelligence. This portal, which is our navel, which opens up and allows life to exist and to replicate, is also a portal of energy that we can either distribute out or receive. So just being mindful of that is like really, really important that I convey to young girls and to women. As far as personal experience, did you want me to speak on like a client experience or something personal more so with you?
I was thinking, because Folami mentioned something that made me remember maybe conversations we had, or I've heard you say this before, about like if a woman starts crying, like yes. What is that when what is that about the experience of? I think it's the experience of how you do what you do. It's almost ceremonial.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Allowing the women to really peruse, pick out the color, understand the meaning of the color, and then chooses. It's like choosing, you said, your own protection or your own healing, choosing your own medicine, almost like, so I'm gonna get this orange because it represents this, and I need to this.
So once I started speaking on how these colors or gemstones or choices have symbolism behind it, and it unveils, it kind of peels away at the layers of individuals. And a lot of women, women got layers, okay? And people come in here thinking they're just getting waist beads and don't realize we're about to go deep. And I don't mean to just go deep. It's not my intention, like, I'm going to go deep on this sister right here because she need to feel it. No, I want them to be able to come to a space and place where they can be very relaxed, because getting beads is a very intimate experience. I'm asking people to pull up their garments or pull down garments partially so that they can expose an area of their body where some people don't even allow their closest, partners, mates, to even see, maybe out of self-conscious or just about, their personal choice. It's an invitation, to somebody who in most parts is a stranger. And so I have to always, definitely receive them with love and care, like they're my own sister or they're my own child. And that's also how the whole idea of sisterhood is woven into the wearing of beads, because I just look at this, my business, I guess you'll say it, as a way of extending my sister circle. And so when people come in, you're immediately, you're a sister of mine. What can I do for you? How can I help you? How can I support you get to your goal? And so as I start talking about these colors, they start peeling off layers. And then they want to start revealing, what their needs are. And a lot of needs come from the lack or suffrage or trauma. And so when they start speaking on these experiences they've had, it starts to open up wounds that are not healed. Mm-hmm. And so oftentimes the tears come because there's an open wound that has not been addressed. And then when they start talking about, they realize, most people realize at that moment in time that they have not addressed it yet. And it's like the beads become a medium, but also a trigger. Mm-hmm. Or the conversation is more or less a trigger for them to kind of just really take in what they're going through, and using this whole process of getting beaded as a rite of passage to grow from whatever they've been holding on to for so long. Right. And when I talk about trauma, it has extended from women being abused, sexually violated at very young ages, oftentimes by family members. So growing up in having appreciation for their bodies, or understanding that their bodies belong to them, was a mindset shift. And then for younger girls who haven't even had this conversation, to kind of build this idea that your body is yours, it's sacred now and forever. And so if they ever encounter a situation where they feel violated, they know how to speak on that, because they're now empowered and educated, knowing that, oh, I'm not bad. This is my body. Right. You know, I don't have to take this vessel and be in any and everybody's space. I go to where I'm celebrated, not where I'm just tolerated, where I'm supported, where I'm loved on. And then, but it all starts within. So it makes people go into this introspective kind of state where they're really looking at themselves from inside out and choosing things for themselves first before they have these expectations for how others treat them.
Right.
You know,
that's beautiful. Yeah.
I had an older woman come in here, and she was 65, and she had been married for 30 years. And mind you, she's my senior. And she's asking me marital counseling questions like, what can I do with my husband? I cannot be with him anymore. You know, she grew through an elevated state where she wanted to just live her life and be happy, but he was grumpy all the time. He was angry. He was very bitter. He never made her feel beautiful, feel great. You know, anytime, any opportunity that he had to bring her down, he would. And so that became very toxic for her. And she realized that I don't need this toxic person in my space. And so for her, getting beads with her, coming into her own and realizing that, yes, I've been here for many, many years. I have love for him, but he is toxic for my well-being. I cannot be in the same space. And so it was hard and strange, because now I'm advising someone who I would normally seek advice from on what she should potentially be doing for herself to separate herself from that toxic energy. And for starters, I advise her to give him space. You know, sometimes people don't really respect and love you until you're gone. And maybe that gone doesn't have to be forever, but long enough for them to understand that a shift has to happen. If they're not going to change, then that's not a space you're going to want to return to. Right. I had a woman who experienced a life death experience where she almost died because her good friend was attacked by her then boyfriend. And I guess they were separating out of a relationship, and he was not ready for it to end. And so their argument turned violent, where he basically took her life. Her friend was there. And so he attacked her because she was a witness. Wow. And he tried to cut her throat. And so she's telling me this. And so I'm ingesting all of this, trying to not cry myself, because this was very emotional for her. And she wanted to release. And she chose these particular beads that glowed. And so she said, this is my reminder that God's light is always following me, that I'm here for a reason. I made it through. Many women don't make it through, but she lived a life for about 5 or 6 years after that happened. She said she felt this darkness in her, like she was afraid to go places, to be in spaces. She lost confidence in herself. She had scars from the turmoil, from the trauma, and she didn't want to be in public to show people and then have to tell people what happened to her. But she was growing out of this space, and she used these beads as her rite of passage to celebrate herself and to re-acknowledge that she is light, and she is always in God's light, where she really felt spiritually connected. And she wanted to be reminded by that every single day. And so her beads would glow every day and remind her of just that. So I realized how important and vital this role I sit in is for people. This is not no play, craft and go thing. Like, no, I have people's lives like in my hands. Like what I say will either support them moving closer to their goals or not. So I really tried to turn and be a little more conscious of, what I say, how I present the beads, and making sure it's a very whole experience. So people can get the most out of this experience if it's the very first and last time I meet them, or it's the beginning of a long relationship. So I realized, though, that almost every woman who comes in here has had some type of trauma, some type of loss, something they have not let go. And so if this is your path to, and a way in which I can support them elevating out of releasing that, I'm all for it.
Right. That's,
So
yeah. And then all the other benefits of body acceptance, and because I
yes,
women of all sizes, and then on the continent, women of all sizes. It's,
absolutely.
so that shifting in that way too. But I have a twofer. I have a question for both of you, because I don't know, I'm onto something and I can't can't articulate it, but I just think it's really, like divine that it's the three of us. So the first thing, I know Falami will fill me on this, for those of us in certain traditions, we receive beads for protection or for other reasons, right? And so I never, I'm almost like, wow, so your role is almost like a urban in that sense, selecting colors and or allowing them, and I would say their ori select what is best, is their higher selves, so and then choosing your own protection. That's just one thing. And then we can build about that later, but that's a whole nother topic about spirituality. But about girls, so how early, is it ever too early to start talking to girls, for example, about starting business, about their body, or like how early would you start teaching a girl about iridology, for example, Falami? Because that's a skill. That's like, and we both our birth came from birth working traditions too. Like how early, is it ever too early to start teaching a girl a skill that teaches her about herself, but then will help the community? Like waist beading, like iridology, like that's for her family, for life.
Oh, I forgot to mention that I am a mother of two. I have a 21 years old, a 28 years old, and I have a husband for 33 years. I forgot to mention that. So both of my daughters, my daughter, when she was 2 years old, she was about 2 or 3. I got a picture of her over there, and she looked at her hands and she said, "I have healing hands." That was her words. She said, "I have healing hands." So I let her look in eyes. I only let my daughters, we used to do this when my children were younger. We would sit on the couch and I taught them, I'm thinking of a number, y'all. What number am I thinking of? And I was teaching them that. I was asking, I'm thinking of something. What am I thinking of? When we would go walking in the woods, I would think of things and we would talk to each other mentally of what we was thinking about. So by then, I believe that I would have to ask my daughter, but I know she must have been around, I'm thinking she's born 1998. I think I must have taught her 2005. So she must be about 7 or 8 years old when she got down with I had her doing the chakra readings, and I would let her do the other girls in the sister circle. I don't let the children, they can do y'all mommy and daddy and close siblings, because when we go and do the things like when I was taking doing the bead work that she does, all I could pick up is that she is a vessel. She's not alone. Those ancestors have her. They're guiding her. She's doing this work, but she is definitely carrying on the work. She's got strong spiritual forces that help her each and every day. So when we deal with our children, they're so open and so innocent. And some grown folks got too much work that them babies can't look in people's eyes. They can play with their little siblings and younger people, but we don't need them looking at no dog on the dogs. Like she said, they come with too much baggage. They can do some things with mommy and daddy. And sometimes we can let them do a little bit stuff with grandmama. She's not too bitter, or grandpa, if he's not too, you know what I'm saying? But they cannot do. So I would expose them as early as, I think about as early as 7 sometimes. It depends on the child, because these spirits are coming here and they're coming quickly and they are reclaiming and they don't forget things. I got to remember at 3 years old, they seen what I had in me. I used to sit and talk to the ancestors in my high chair, they told me. And I used to say things about the ancient ones and the ancestors. So they seen things in me at 3 years old. So you see these things in your children. Every mother knows their child. And even when we carry them, we eat different, we do different things. So we kind of know the spirits. So I would say, Sister Asatu, I would say as early as 3 years old, I would start taking them on herbal walks. I did 3 years old to 5 years old. And when I come into a classroom, they still say, Mama Falami, remember you said dandelion is good for the liver? They still recall. So I would start as early as 3 years old. Some of them talking at 2 and 1. So if they can get them iPads, we can start introducing these things from, go get the stone right here. Go get that stone for the crown chakra. My daughter could get it. I would do a brown paper. I would draw her on a brown piece of paper. We would lay the chakras out. I would tell her, come here. I need some. I've been dealing with females. Come give me the moonstones. Come put them right here up here, right around here, right around the waist, right here on this left ovary. I'm feeling some energy. She could pick the stones out. So I exposed them. And now my 28 years old, she getting into this. I'm like, okay. She used to just ask me, Mom, what does the left side mean? Does that mean a man getting on your nerves or a woman getting on your nerves? What one is the man's side? That's what the young ones just
yeah, I can see that.
They want to know that kind of information. If your right side, if your right feet is messing with you, that means a man don't want you to move forward. So they would come for stuff like that. But now
their own millennial twist on it.
Yeah. So yes, I would think that I think, you know, and you see our children gravitate towards some of these things. Sometimes they will teach us certain things. Listen to your children. Listen to them. They will tell you.
And trust. So what I'm hearing you're saying is that trust that they will absorb the information that they can handle. Right?
Yes.
Like,
I mean, early on, but sometimes think about things that people showed us, and sometimes we picked it up later in life.
You're right.
Some of us stayed to the course. Some things people told us what to do, what not to do. Sometimes, you know, we get into LA, we get into Oakland, but some of us go a different way. We get there right straight through, and some of us take a little longer to get there, but we get there.
Okay, thank you.
For my growth, I actually started them really early, and a lot of African cultures, you actually get beaded shortly after you're born. So the introduction to beads themselves, as far as the wearing of them, starts pretty early. And then that's also coupled with the idea that they want to make sure that child is protected, no matter where that child travels or goes. And so the beads will be placed around their ankle, their waist, and their wrists, sometimes their neck. And then for conversation, I start as soon as the children can identify parts in their body. And that sometimes comes even without being able to talk. And so I use learning different points of their body with, you know, some of the beads I would place. So the ankle, they knew that was the ankle, whether they could say it or not. I could say it and they knew how to point to it. And the waist or the stomach or the belly is how I introduce that part of their body. And then their arm, the wrist is how I introduce that part by the beads, because the beads would call for attention because they're colorful, they're interesting to them, to the eye. And so they would gravitate that, and then I would, pinpoint different body parts if they're having any pain in any parts of their body to kind of learn their body. And then as they got older and went to the bathroom and got potty trained on their own, I taught them how it was important that, during the time in the bathroom, now that they are old enough to properly take care of themselves, that nobody else is necessary in the bathroom with you. And so I would tell them that this is your private sacred time in the bathroom. And now that you're old enough to take care of yourself, you would go into the bathroom. And so I would couple that with them knowing where their beads were around their waist. So I would say if there's any situation where your beads are being exposed, then that would be, a problem. And so I have a little saying where they've rehearsed and know this whole saying where if they've seen your beads, they've seen too much. And so this was my way of empowering them about their bodies and about being able to speak up for themselves if they ever felt they were in a situation where they felt, that someone was too close or just violating their body space. And so I use their beads for one as a way to introduce that that knowledge and that power. And so I will give like specific words and language for them to use so that it wouldn't be something they would have to reach for. Because oftentimes as young kids, they are told you have to respect an adult and do what an adult says. But adults are perpetrators of, a lot of abuse. And so I didn't want them to feel like they don't truth or respect for their body and their body space just because it's an adult, or someone older, and even their own peers. And to introduce this whole idea of sacredness and sacred bodies. And as they got older, the conversation, got deeper. And so as my, now 10-year-old is older and she's learning now about, her cycle coming and how her beads may fluctuate in how they compress against her body, or they may go up or down depending on how she may or may not, form weight in her midsection when she's, or get bloated when she's on her cycle. So it's also a way to gauge, the gaining and losing of weight in general, and also to be conscious of what's happening. So you're more connected to changes in your body and fluctuations. So you can identify whether or not there's something that maybe needs to be addressed. Bees can literally be introduced typically, or at the start of birth, before conversation. And then once they start speaking, start talking about their body parts, and then how to protect those body parts, and keep them sacred and protected. So, and then the conversation just keeps elevating. As the kids get older, the conversations get deeper because they're diving, deeper and deeper into, growing through adolescence and into the next womanhood experience, which calls for a lot more deeper conversations.
Let me unmute myself as I'm talking to myself.
Oh, okay, great.
So I think what both of you are saying, and I'm also keeping track of our time together today, is that you start early as you can, you put it in a way that they can understand, you give it meaning and significance, and then as they get older, you add more information. So first you're teaching, about one stone, the quartz crystal or whatever, or you're putting the waist beads, and then as they start to explore their body, you're adding more information. So it's never too early to talk to your children about, and that's where the rites of passage, that's where the transfer of information begins. And so, which is really, really, really beautiful that you have already pass that tradition on to your daughters. So my question, I would like you to speak to the mothers, and you can just very, very short, and this will be our wrap up. Speak to the mothers who might come to you and say, I don't know how to talk to her about her period. I don't know how to talk. Girl, I can't handle the fact that my baby's growing up. We all have that friend. It might even be your own niece that your sister just can't handle it, or your close friend. So, or what do you say to the mothers that don't feel comfortable and don't have access to a sister circle, a Sisters of Tomorrow, a YEWAS, a Rites of Passage? How do we encourage them to have these discussions to pass, because we're to pass on the traditions? You two, what I know about both of you, like Folami said, she comes from 6 generations of healers, they passed on through the food, through the healing. You too, your mama started an African-centered school. You've been getting this since birth. You were in the womb and your mother had a vision for what she wanted for her children. So you two were steeped like ancestor babies, like really, like you are queen mothers, because the intention that your families, they poured this into you, and which is why you are treasures, just treasures, and treasures. So y'all, after you watch this, if you don't know, you should go and back and fetch in the wisdom that is in your community while folks are in the living. Like, don't check out Mama Folami, Iya Folami, like after the fact. Now, iridology in 2020, we have Dr. Goss. I trust you. That's one legacy. But here we have a woman, a Black woman, who has all this information, is so generous. The same with Ayodele. So what message, as we wrap up, can you give to that mama who's like, I can't talk to my baby, it brings up my trauma? How can I begin my daughter's rites of passage?
I did.
Whoever wants, who's going to go first?
How you doing?
Okay, I'm gonna mute myself. I talk too much.
See me? My volume keeps going out. Can you guys hear me? Okay, then I'll just start talking. So what I have encouraged a lot of mothers to do is to create their own circle. And when I talk about the Rite of Passage program that I was about, I take the word program out of it first. And I say it was just a group of moms, much like you. Like every time I do an event, this is just what I say. I said the people were individuals who were aunties, who were best friends. Some people were moms, some people didn't have children, but they had wisdom to share. And so it can be a group of 2, a group of 4, more if you're able to do that. But the responsibility of mentoring and coaching our young girls up is a communal responsibility and not just yours, because you have not lived every experience as a woman. But if you couple your experience with another woman and then another lady, elder woman, another auntie, a cousin, a friend, or someone of expertise, or has in a field of expertise that can share some wonderful wisdom to your child, bring them in. You know, we put so much weight on ourselves being responsible for the rearing of our children, yet we need to understand that the rearing of our children is a village responsibility. And so I take the word program out so they can just be very aware that this is something you can do. It was no formal application. It was just some moms that said, you know what, our girls need to spend more time together. Okay, well, let's think of some activities. Well, what do you do best? Oh, well, I'm a seamstress. Oh, great. I can teach these girls how to sew. Well, I love to cook. Well, I can teach these girls how to follow a recipe and measure for meals. And, or, okay, I'm a physical therapist. So let me teach these girls how to take, better care of their bodies. We even had a physician's assistant that knew a lot about women's health. So she taught us about our health, gave us diagrams, let us look at all of our female organs, identify parts, take a mirror and look at our parts. I mean, these are like activities that she suggested for us just by her own personal experience. So the more women we brought in, the more different levels of expertise became the draw. And then, of course, incorporating even women without children, because sometimes people feel like, well, I don't have kids, so I can't really participate. I don't have nothing to offer. And I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? You're a woman. You've lived this experience, and I'm sure you've had something that you can share that these girls will learn from or that we learned from. And so I just kind of bring it to layman's terms, like we just people. This is not no, formal, it doesn't have to be a formalized thing in where you have to have, a 501c3 and credentials and this or that. We're just people who have love to give. So let's share it with each other. So
yeah, Ashe, yes. Thank you, Ayodele.
I had my daughter when she turned 14 years old. I had 2 daughters, and one is a Libra and one is a Scorpio. And so my oldest daughter, who's 28, she had a coming of age ceremony. So she got her cycle. Both my daughters got their cycles at 14. So at this coming of age ceremony, all the different elders in the family was here. My friends that were involved in her life, as helping her as a baby, different sisters. So my living room was full. And so when I did her coming of age ceremony, so many other mothers wanted me to do it for their daughters. I'm a kind of different mother. So when my other daughter got her cycle of 14, she's a Scorpio. She's very private. She wanted just her and I to go out, and we celebrated together, just her and I. That's how she wanted it. And I respected her wishes. And so I didn't, like with the coming of age ceremony, I did that with my oldest daughter, but with my youngest daughter, she was like, Mom, I really don't want, she didn't want it. But so her and I, we went out together, and me and her sister, we did some things, we made it very private, just us. But when I gave my daughter coming of age ceremony, other people in the community, they wanted it for their children. And my cousin, she wanted it, and all the girls there, they all had kind of wanted it. So the girls who were there that had cycles and didn't have a coming of age ceremony, I made sure I had roses for every young teenager that was there. They got red roses, and so people gave them different things at the coming of age ceremony. They gave them different things. So that's how I had celebrated her coming of age.
So would you say keep it simple, or base it on the personality of your daughter when you're planning something like that?
Yes. Some people want to make it Women's Day. They can just have it to be, because I had more support with my oldest daughter, because she came through a lot of the Pan-African schools. By the time in Philadelphia, we don't have any Pan-African schools. We have no more African-centered schools, basically independent schools here. But I was able to have that with so I had more of a support system.
Right, yeah.
With the youngest one, you know, most of the, you know, independent schools were gone. But it still was celebrated. She still understood. We still was able to, and really, our children come through us, but they're not us.
Right.
So we instill these things in them, and sometimes they're going to make choices. So we sometimes think, and it's so important that we do what we do, but we got to understand that I had to learn as a mother, no matter what I did, what I instilled to them, they still make choices that I may not always agree with, you know. Yeah. But it's good that we do give them these programs, because now in their 20s, I see them coming back to some of the things that I see them rebel against. Now they're coming back into.
So we're laying the foundation. We're a foundation they can come back to after they go and explore themselves. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you. I feel like it was divine, the three of us. Yeah. And I'm sure the girls will be back next week, but this is the first week of school. Everybody's stressed out. They kept texting me and I'm like, well, you could be on the call. You don't have to just text me. So I love you and I appreciate you. Thank you. Yay, you made it. Yes. You made it. So I'll bring you by yourself if you're open to it. Will you be open to just coming by yourself?
Okay.
You as the guest?
Okay, yes. Yes, I will.
Okay, we'll arrange that. And
I might have a few of my little sisters from Sister
Circle. Yeah, please do. They can talk. Yeah.
3 or 4 of them. Not all of them.
Okay, I hear you. Yeah, last week I had like 5 girls. This week, I don't know. So thank you. I'm about to go teach. So I'm going to wrap this up. So thank you for joining for Sacred WombTalks. And we'll be back next week. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Love you. Bye-bye.